Welcome to Daily Meditation with Sangha Live.
Welcome to everyone. When it's your own morning time and you see many good mornings on a screen, it's tempting to also say good morning, but I also see we have some who it's late at night who are tuning in, and of course there are many, no doubt, tuning into this as a recording and fitting it into your own lives in your own time. But it is a good morning here, as good as mornings can be. Bright, crisp, the sun is bursting out, and there's quite a feeling of coming alive, becoming more awake, more present, and yeah, we can tune into all of that together. So however you are, wherever you are, really welcoming you into this session, and as many are doing, welcoming each other into this together. So we'll take some time settling in, arriving, feeling into how we're doing, letting go of what's not so necessary at this time, and then we'll open out and explore a few more ideas around practice and how things are going for us. I just see that someone's raised their hand, probably accidental. Actually, it's disappeared again. I'm not quite so familiar with the raise hand function, but great that it's there. And maybe we'll figure out a way to use it later on in the question and responses, if you want to bring attention to something you want to share. But yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So I'm going to share a few ideas, then we'll have a good half hour of practice. Well, I'll just drop in a few suggestions into that practice to support the silent exploration that we'll be doing. But I just want to share a few more ideas flowing on from yesterday. Thank you so much for those of you who shared things in the chat, reflections, comments, and any kind of questions that you had there. I copied them all down. I've had a look through them, and there could be a lot more that we could explore from all of that. So, welcome to share any more, and I will try and address the majority of that through today's session, while also kind of keeping on the development, the theme that we're going to. So yesterday we explored maintaining an intention as an attitude. So I actually started off the session, for those of you who weren't there, just feeling what would be something we would like to see more of coming into being from our practice, from our life. Things like more peacefulness, more acceptance, more enjoyment, more all of those types of things. Yeah, more patience. Any beautiful quality we can do, and it's like, maybe that could be more in the present experience. And it sounded like, from many of the comments that came, that was actually an enjoyable way to practice. And we even actually went away from the session, maybe intending to be more intentional through the day. And, I'd love to hear how that went, if that was something that you endeavored to do. So, that intention, not just for the meditation practice itself, but actually also, maybe that's for the whole day. Maybe it's going on, it's ongoing. Yeah. There was one question which maybe is just worth addressing now, and then we can kind of have that making a little bit more sense to us. So I was making this priority on the intention and not worrying too much if we don't catch all of the breaths. And we use this phrase, quality over quantity. So it's actually the quality of meeting this moment, this breath, this sound, and then opening that out so that we can kind of bring that to whatever we meet. And even if what we're meeting is, you know, some kind of distracted thought or something like this, bring it there, bring the intention there. So we're not prioritizing the so-called object of the meditation quite so much. Does that make sense? What can then kind of sound like, well, maybe the object of meditation doesn't matter. And we're kind of trying to find a balance here, a little balance between too much emphasis and too little emphasis on being present or being focused. Now, if we get really intense about being focused, we'll probably get too tight. If we say, well, you know, focus, presence, none of that matters, we might get too loose. So we're not actually saying something quite as radical as it doesn't matter. The object of attention doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the ambient, radiant atmosphere, whatever it is. I think it's radical enough to say how we meet anything can be more significant than what we meet. You know, if we're seeking more love, peace, excitement, patience, whatever, it's not in the object that those things appear. It's really in the way of relating that they come into being. I was speaking to a teenager recently. We were playing tennis at the same session, and they kind of asked me, "What do you do? What's this meditation that you're teaching people?" And we were kind of having a bit of a joke about me always talking and everyone else being in silence. But you know, we got down to the kind of the serious thing of like wanting to explain to them that I encourage people to use their attention, this really precious gift that we have in life, in ways that are more beneficial, more wholesome, more you know, bringing us to a state of being more capable of acting and expressing what we most deeply value. And they seem to think, okay, that sounds like makes sense. But related to this point here, I use this example of, you know, enjoying music or a film next to somebody who's not enjoying it. Yeah, and we've all had that experience, and this teenager has had that experience. Like they're really, oh, it's great, and everything, and then the person next to them say, oh, it's boring, it's repetitive, you know, it's just not their thing. So obviously, the joy and the enjoyment are not in the thing. Otherwise, everybody would enjoy and have enjoyment for it. It's in that appreciation that comes through the way of relating. Yeah. So we're emphasizing intention. We're emphasizing the quality over the quantity of those moments of presence, so that we're not thinking being with a breath is ding. You know, it's actually being with the breath with this quality of, and then fill in the blank. What's your intention? More peacefulness, more patience, more spaciousness, you know, more delicacy, more excitement, more enthusiasm. It's not that, you know, meditation is all about the disappearance, the fading, the dissolving, etc., etc. Yeah. So hopefully that's nice and clear. So the question was, you know, when focusing on an intention, how does one manage thoughts drifting away from the breath? Is that the goal? So it's not the goal to have thoughts drifting away from the breath. To let the mind drift slightly to contemplation of an intention. Again, not so much. It's much more of a sense of bringing that quality, regardless if his thoughts drift a lot or little, bringing that intention moment by moment, more and more into the experience, and then seeing what that does. So what we're trying to do is not make such a big deal about thoughts or not thoughts. What really matters is that intention, that presence, that connection to the moment. And if a thought keeps coming and we feel like this thought is ruining my meditation, what would it be to meet that with the qualities that we're trying to cultivate? Okay, that's kind of what we're aiming at. Yesterday, we also included the theme of interconnection, which has been present in the last few weeks for Sangha Live, if you've been coming along. And there were some questions around this, and I will come back to them specifically later. But I'm using this point also to kind of go into the next bit, which is when we sense more and we sense our interconnection with, all beings and all things, actually realize we also come into contact with other areas of painfulness, other areas of it's hard to be with this. And for some of us, we don't actually need to come into anything else. We're actually already in contact with painfulness in this body, in this moment, in this heart mind. So one way or another, we're coming into contact with painful. And we often talk about kind of a compassionate meeting there, compassionate. And let's just spend a little time with this idea, just to kind of open it out, because if that's an intention that we want to have in our practice, how can this intention, this compassionate intention, bring some relief for all beings, including ourselves? This attitude of compassion. So many of you will know compassion is one of the 4 boundless heart-mind attitudes we can cultivate. That goes along with goodwill. It goes along with appreciative joy. And it actually also includes one that we often call equanimity. Now, I like to rename words that don't make any sense to me. So if you're happy with equanimity and it means exactly what it says, it's not an everyday word that we use. So I've translated it into more kind of everyday words for myself. Equanimity for me means radiant non-reactivity. Radiant non-reactivity. Yeah. So we can explain a bit more what that means maybe in a little later on. It can also mean for me, and this is a bit more of a mouthful, but transcendent peacefulness. And again, I can say more about that, but that's kind of what equanimity is pointing towards. The word equanimity, as I say, doesn't mean enough to me. I was also starting to feel a little bit the same about compassion. Compassion, maybe it was just getting tossed around a little bit too much. And I really had to think for myself, having explored equanimity in that way, what do we mean compassion? I often look, etymologically, or look it up in a dictionary, so com with suffering. Com is with passion, suffering. So being with suffering, coming close to suffering. And being with the painful is, of course, an essential step. Essential. We need to not run away. We mustn't ignore the pain in our life. Whatever, being it's appearing to most directly impact, whether that's us or another. That's reactivity. That's not peaceful. That's not the path, right? Compassion is the path of practice that we're on. Ignorance is not helpful for anyone. It's not praised by the wise. It's quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. Don't ignore the pain. But of course, being with suffering would also miss the mark, wouldn't it? It would kind of miss the thing. Like being with suffering, pain, or ill-being, it's not the goal. It can actually be hugely overwhelming if what we think, I have to be with all of the suffering, I have to go to where it's worst, I have to think about the worst possible things, and we will soon feel a sense of burnout. Being with more suffering is not compassionate by itself, not by the way that we're meaning it. So it's a necessary prerequisite, but not the resolution, not the completion. And our resolve, our intention is not, may I be with all the suffering, but actually, may all the suffering ease. May all the suffering ease. So I'm pretty sure that all makes sense. Yeah. When we look at the old texts, the word they use, karuna, has this ka prefix to it. Karuna is the word we translate as compassion, and it is an action. Ka is the same as karma, which means acting, actions, and we are known by our actions in those ways. So what's happening is and it's happening there in the compassion as well, is we are moved. When we come into contact with pain, we are moved. But we have to make sure that we're not just moved and, impacted, touched. We're actually moved to act, right? So karuna is an action arousing the desire to relieve or remove the pain and suffering in the world, in others, in ourselves. It's that movement, right? Now, oftentimes when we feel painfulness, it's like, I want to get rid of that. But actually, it's not, I want to get rid of that. And this is why I came up with a phrase, which I'm using as the title for this whole week, that makes sense to me, which is, it's resolve. It's resolve, caring resolve. So resolve is like a resolution. It's also like an intention to care. Yeah. But also resolve is related to the word of dissolve, and it means to loosen. Resolve means to really disentangle, really loosen, really open the pain, the suffering. Find out, what's this leaning on? How can I ease it? How can I open it? Yeah. And the word caring resolve, the phrase caring resolve, to me makes a lot more sense. Makes a lot more sense than I should be compassionate, because then that's kind of lost its meaning for me. And that's for me, right? I sometimes say, in a kind of a joking, self-deprecating way that's there in the culture and the way I was brought up, but I'm not that smart. I can think a lot. and so I really relate to the question. It's like, well, what about when we're thinking a lot in meditation? It's like, yeah, that happens. It happens to me. But, I need things to be simple and clear. And it's like, well, what do you mean? Maybe that's my area of the spectrum of experience. Yeah, it's like, I like things to be clear. When I say compassion, I prefer to say caring resolve. The care that wants to dissolve the pain, the care that is a clear intention. How can I care about this? Okay, so I think that's clear. I've got a few more ways of coming back and explaining that if it needs a little bit more clarity. But let's take as our intention today, it's caring resolve. So hopefully yesterday we saw having a nice clear intention can add something to the practice, brings us to a certain direction. So as I said before, when we're coming into meditation, let's pick our posture. Pick our posture. So what's that? What would that do? What would that be for you? What's that posture going to be right? So, there's 4 kind of classical postures: walking, standing, sitting, reclining. What one most speaks of a caring resolve, if you're happy to pick up that intention for this time? And don't worry, we're not going to dive in and be in the most painful stuff. We actually spend most of our time settling into our practice. We will open to the painful, but not in a narrow and problematic way. I think it'll work for you. And we won't go to the most painful thing. We'll use this as a practice time. So finding that posture, settling into that posture. We're going to have half an hour of practice. And as I say, we'll start off settling, stabilizing our attention. We're going to have, again, that emphasis on intention. Not be too worried if the mind wanders. The intention is what matters. So if you're happy meeting the breath or some body sensations, we could go there. If you prefer to open into the sounds, you could go there. Having that sense of caring. A concept I like to introduce into the practice, and they're always introduced with the sense of, it might be useful to see it this way, rather than this is how you have to see it, this is what's true. Similar to interconnection. It's an idea that's useful in the practice. I have this idea, this sound, this body sensation, depending where I'm attending it, has arisen to be met with kindness and care. kind of projecting onto it. That's why it came. Can I, in return, meet this with kindness and care? So if you're in the breath, maybe the next 3 breaths, just the inhalation, just the very beginning of the inhalation, can you meet those with a sense of welcoming, a sense of kindness and care? If you're in the sounds, just the arising of sounds. In this practice, you're just trying to meet those first moments. Don't worry about the rest of the breath. If your attention follows the breath, it could be a habit pattern, it could be because it's actually nice and interesting. Either way, that's fine. But it doesn't have to. All we need to do is be back there for that first beginnings of a movement of an in-breath with that caring attitude. Okay, so it's or the arising of the sounds. With the breath, it's a little easier, it has this rhythm to it. So if you're happy in the breath, we could do it that way. Okay, again, just next 3 inhalations, maintaining that kind, welcoming attitude. And then that spirit of not overly stressing in the practice. Do 3 breaths and then relax, rest. See where the attention goes. And if we can, just that background sense of a kind, caring, attending atmosphere in the attending. And if it feels kinder, just to let go of that intending at this time also. Better that we pace ourselves than we push ourselves. And then when we're ready, and I'm going to suggest we're ready, we're going to do another 3 in-breaths. And this time we're going to go for the whole of the in-breath. Try and catch it from its very beginnings. And you can first notice that it's moving, and then notice it filling, fuller, and all the way to it's all the way in now, and we feel quite full with the breath. Then just releasing the attention on that. As the breath releases, we can notice it or not notice it. We're not worrying about the out breaths now. A similar thing, full arising of a sound. And you can also see for yourself in this part after the 3 breaths where we're really present, really intentional, bringing that kindness and care into the sensations of what we're experiencing. And then we rest back. And if you're with the sounds, still use the 3 breaths or whatever you can. Bring yourself that sense of there's a time where we really attend and there's a time where we rest. And when you're resting, you can still have that intention of kindness and care, whether it's to oneself or to what we're noticing. You can also see how soft that can be. So we do another 3 inhalations or risings, really emphasizing the intention. Okay, so some of this won't translate so easily across to the listening. This next point will though. When we are listening to the breath, listening to the sounds, we can have a sense we're actually kind of going out, trying to focus on them. What we want to emphasize more is actually a receiving. So receiving rather than seeking the breath. The breath's going to come, the sounds are going to come. Question, how sensitively can you listen to this? Just that sensitivity can bring that kindness and care, that welcoming. Allow that to be present in the background. Over time, we can modulate it, like we've got a mixing desk. More of that intention, more of that receptivity, more of that sensitivity. Let's do another 3 inhalations with that, and then we'll move on to the out breath and the fading of sound. Okay, so allow a little more silence into the practice. So allow you to explore the exhalation in your own time, exploring just a little bit of the breath, balancing the atmosphere of attention to what we're attending to receptivity of attention. I would say just do the out breaths for a bit and then do all of the breath after a while. Don't rush it. Remembering the sense of quality of attending, not quantity. Doesn't matter if you've been lost for a long time. Just meeting this moment. Distraction or present experience with kindness and care. Guiding the attention more towards the breath or the sounds when it feels supportive to do so. And if you haven't already, it might be a good time to see if you can be with the whole of 3 breaths. What's necessary in attention to really be with the whole of a breath, the whole of the sound sphere for that period of time. Almost certainly for all of us at certain times, our mind will be away from the object of attention. Minds are creative, they seek out really beneficial quality that they do that in the whole of our life. Creative, inventive hearts and minds won't forever find a breath or the sound sphere fulfilling. So we're on the alert for what's painful, what's a problem, what's uncomfortable. So a lot of where our hearts and minds wander to, often to the painful, or it can be. And we can also bring that caring, resolve attitude to those areas. I want to suggest the last 5 minutes of the practice that we start to do that intentionally rather than unintentionally, and with a really clear intentional atmosphere. So there might be somewhere in the body that feels a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit blocked. We might be feeling that urge to fidget, to move, to scratch, to squeeze, to massage. Or we might just be annoyed that it's there, a bit disappointed that it's still around. Similarly, there can be, emotions and thoughts that we could be feeling in that way. And if we are feeling that, maybe it's possible to explore that within the body. There's some area that kind of feels tight or stuck or just tender, painful. Similarly with the sounds, maybe easier to explore this in the body. It might even be a way into the body that feels helpful. So first thing is, we're not going to focus on the painful. We're actually going to open this more receptive mode of attention, opening around this. And there's kind of a way it feels that like it has a center to this pain. We're actually going to come away from the center, open wider and wider, until we've opened wide enough that maybe we could even say, I'm kind of on the boundary of where it's painful. Actually doesn't really feel so painful all the way out there. So you can come to other parts of the body. I often have this image of like a big circle opening out, widening out, widening out. Just as if on a map, you're looking at a map and there's your town and you keep widening that circle. Eventually, we're not really in the town anymore. We're in the fields around, or the area around, another neighborhood around. Yeah, the same, kind of opening around this area of sensation. And once we're far enough out, we don't really feel it's so painful. We can start to radiate a sense of ease and care, where it's easy, but it's the same process. We're giving space for what we don't tend to give space, giving time for what we don't tend to give time, and giving kindness and care. This might feel, what's the point? It's kind of pathetic to need to come all the way out here. It's actually beneficial. I think you'll see in time, it's beneficial. At the least, we're practicing giving kindness and care. You can allow the attention to come more towards the heart of this if it feels a bit too dull, a little bit to the outskirts of the painful. Caring. Caring resolve, how caring dissolves the rejection, dissolves the escape. And stay out where it's easy. Yeah, keep wide where it's easy. Until it becomes easy to come closer, we don't come closer. You notice it actually is getting easier. Then you go closer. Just tuning into that feeling of how the caring for the painful is resolving somewhat the painfulness, the suffering with the painfulness. We'll have another minute. You can just carry on with this if it's helpful. If that's faded away, come back to the breath or the sounds. Bringing this caring, resolve, this kind attention to life. And that can mean to the whole of this body, this being. All of this heart and mind and attention and awareness, thoughts, feelings, emotions and moods met with kindness and care. And closing with the wish that may all beings be met with kindness and care, near and far, known and unknown. May all beings be met with kindness and care. As we begin to transition out, just recognizing how it feels in your own body, heart, and mind right now, having cultivated an attitude that's at least a little more boundless than we might normally reside in.
Today's podcast is an offering to you from our archive of freely available live daily classes. We make wisdom teachings and meditations as freely available as possible to as many people as wish to practice. You can help ensure we can continue to support a worldwide Sangha by leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts, by sharing this with someone who'd be interested, and by offering a small financial support at sangha.live/donate.